Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Gurudev, 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 Jai Jai Gurudev, 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 Jai Jai Gurudev. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvachakacharya Shila Astatar, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Shila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। गंगा देवी की जय, यमुना देवी की जय, भक्ति देवी तुलसी देवी महारानी की जय। All glories to the simple devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the simple devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the simple devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindubhyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So good morning, Hare Krishna everyone. Thank you for coming. So today we are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 16, entitled Jaya and Vijaya Cursed by the Sages, and we're reading text 26. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Eto Suritara Gatim Pratipadya Sadhya Eto Surita Gatim Pratipadya Sadhya Samramba Samrita Samadhya Anubhada Yogo Puya Sakasham Upayasyata Ashuyova Sapo Mayaiva Nimitastadaveta Vipra Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Eto Suritara Gatim Pratipadya Sadhya Samramba Sambrita Samadhi Anubhada Yogo Puya Sakasham Upayasyata Ashuyova Shapo Mayaiva Nimitastadaveta Vipra Please chant. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Eto Sureta Gatim Pratipadya Sadhya Samrama Sambrita Samadhi Anubhada Yogo Puya Sakasham Upayasyata Ashuyova Shri Bhagavanuvacha. Eto suretara gatim pratipadya sadya. Sambramba sambrita samadhi anuvada yogo. Uyasakasham upayasya yoga. Sapo mayaiva nimitastadaveta vipra. Word for word, Sri Bhagavanuvacha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead replied, Eto, these two doorkeepers, Sura Itara, demoniac, Gatim, the womb, Pratipadya, obtaining, Sadhya, quickly, Samramba, by anger, Sambrita, intensified, Samadhi, concentration of mind, Anubada, firmly, Yogo, united with me, Uyaha, again, Sakasham, to my presence, Upayasyataha, shall return, Ashu, shortly, Yaha, which, Va, of you, Shapaha, curse, Maya, by me, ever, alone, Nimittaha, ordained, Tat, that, Aveta, knows, Vipraha, O Brahmanas. Translation. The Lord replied, O Brahmanas, know that the punishment you inflicted on them was originally ordained by me, and therefore they will fall to a birth in a demoniac family, but they will be firmly united with me in thought through mental concentration intensified by anger, and they will return to my presence shortly. Please repeat. The Lord replied, O Brahmanas, know that the punishment you inflicted on them was originally ordained by me, and therefore they will fall to a birth in a demoniac family, but they will be firmly united with me in thought through mental concentration intensified by anger, and they will return to my presence shortly. Purport. The Lord stated that the punishment inflicted by the sages upon the doorkeepers Jaya and Vijaya was conceived by the Lord himself. Without the Lord's sanction, nothing can happen. It is to be understood that there was a plan in the cursing of the Lord's devotees in Vaikuntha, and his plan is explained by many stalwart authorities. The Lord sometimes desires to fight. The fighting spirit also exists in the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, how could fighting be manifested at all? Because the Lord is the source of everything, anger and fighting are also inherent in his personality. When he desires to fight with someone, he has to find an enemy. But in the Vaikuntha world, there is no enemy because everyone is engaged fully in his service. Therefore, he sometimes comes to the material world as an incarnation in order to manifest his fighting spirit. In Bhagavad Gita 4.8 also, it is said that the Lord appears just to give protection to the devotees and to annihilate the non-devotees. The non-devotees are found in the material world, not in the spiritual world. Therefore, when the Lord wants to fight, he has to come to this world. But who will fight with the Supreme Lord? No one is able to fight with him. Therefore, because the Lord's pastimes in the material world are always performed with his associates, not with others, he has to find some devotee who will play the part of an enemy. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says to Arjuna, "My dear Arjuna, both you and I have appeared many, many times in this material world, but you have forgotten, whereas I remember." Thus Jaya and Vijaya were selected by the Lord to fight with him in the material world, and that was the reason the sages came to see him, and accidentally the doorkeepers were cursed. It was the Lord's desire to send them to the material world, not perpetually, but for some time. Therefore, just as on a theatrical stage, someone takes the part of enemy to the proprietor of the stage, although the play is for a short time and there is no permanent enmity between the servant and the proprietor, so the Sura Janas, devotees, were cursed by the sages to go to the Asura Jana, or atheistic families. That a devotee should come into an atheistic family is surprising, but it is simply a show. After finishing their mock fighting, both the devotee and the Lord are again associated in the spiritual planets. That is very explicitly explained here. The conclusion is that no one falls from the spiritual world or Vaikuntha planet, for it is the eternal abode. But sometimes, as the Lord desires, devotees come into this material world as preachers or as atheists. In each case, we must understand that there is a plan of the Lord. Lord Buddha, for example, was an incarnation, yet he preached atheism. There is no God. But actually, there was a plan behind this, as explained in the Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Shakutale. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Shakutale Shrimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Mani. Namaste Saraswati Devi Namaste. So I ask the blessings from all the devotees that I can speak something that will be beneficial to all of us and especially to myself, and I'm speaking for self-purification, and I'll try to repeat whatever I have heard and learned and read from the teachings of the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. So in this purport, Prabhupada mentions there that Krishna's telling the four Kumaras that the punishment that they gave to the two doorkeepers because they stopped them from entering Vaikuntha was originally ordained by me, and that there was a higher plan by the Lord. And in Bhagavad Gita we hear that not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord. So one may question that if nothing happens without the will of the Lord, then where is the question of anyone committing any sin or any pious activities? But we understand from the teachings of the Bhagavatam that in Bhagavad Gita 9.6 purport, it says there that not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus everything is moving under His will. By His will, everything is being created, everything is being maintained, and everything is being annihilated. Still, He is aloof from everything, as space is always aloof from the activities of the atmosphere. So the question of free will is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita chapter 13:23, where it says that Krishna is the Upadrashta, the overseer, and Anumanta, the permitter. So in the purport, Prabhupada elaborates that due to the minute independence, the individual entity is continually rejecting the association of the spiritual light. This misuse of independence is the cause of his material strife in the conditioned nature. So this is where we see that we have minute free will. So Krishna doesn't take away that choice from us, just like parents, loving parents, they have children. they don't force their child to love them. They give them that choice. Otherwise, if we point a gun at someone and say, love me, that's not called love, that's force. So Krishna never ever takes away that free will, that choice for us to turn our face towards him, or we turn our back away from him. And when we turn our back away from him, if we choose to turn our back away from him, then it says there in that purport, that's the cause of our material strife. So just like if when the children grow up and they want to do things independently of their loving parents, even though the parents raise them well and they're trying to guide them, but the wayward child wants to do something independently and wants to leave the association of the parents and do things independently. Of course, everyone has a need for autonomy and independence, and that is there, but if they want to completely cut off their relationship with the parent is not going to force them. Out of love, they're going to allow them to make their choice, but they will always be nearby. Just like sometimes I hear the example, some senior devotees, they were saying that they had a tantrum and they said, I'm going to go to the shop and walk by myself. So the parent stopped the car and let them walk, but from a distance, the father was following the child. So Krishna is like that as the Paramatma within the heart. He never leaves our association. He's always with us, guiding us. Like in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, it says that Krishna gives us remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So if we want to forget him, he's within our heart and he knows what we want. He will allow us to forget him. And if we want to remember him, he will empower us and guide us how we can remember him by approaching his devotees, by approaching the bona fide Guru, Srila Prabhupada, and his followers. So in this purport, it says there that the devotee will dutifully accept the tribulations that are offered to him, knowing that ultimately Krishna is the sanctioner. So we know this famous verse from Bhagavatam 10:14-8. Tattenu kampam susamikshamano bhunjana evatma kritam vipakam vidvagva purbi vidadan namaste jivetayo mukti pade sadayavak. So this verse is always given as a reminder to us when we are struggling by our close well-wishers and dear friends. And the meaning of this verse is, my dear Lord, Lord Brahma was saying this prayer to Krishna. He was saying, my dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. So there it's very important that we understand through the purports, and that's why Prabhupada's purports are very powerful, because sometimes the verses are there, but we need to go deeper and understand the meaning behind it. Here it says, while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds. So we understand the law of karma, that whatever good deeds we do, we'll enjoy the fruits of those, and whatever bad deeds we do, we'll suffer the reactions of it. So for a devotee, when we come to Krishna consciousness, the karmic reactions are cut, but we are still getting some remnants of that reaction, just like the fan. The fan is turned off, but when it's turned off, it's still spinning slightly. So the residual, the last vestiges, Prabhupada mentions in this purport that the last vestiges of our sinful reactions are playing out. So Krishna takes direct charge of his devotees. And here where it says patiently suffering the reactions of his past, it's not that when we suffer that we just sit back and just not take any action. Of course, we do our due diligence. We try to, just say, for example, if you are sick, we try to find some remedy, we make some effort. You know, if there's some, whatever struggle there is, we try to seek help and try to remedy the problem. But if there's no solution comes or very slight solution, then we understand that I've tried my best, and now I'll just accept whatever comes my way. But at the same time, I'll keep on serving Krishna, because it's the example is given that if one was meant to be killed by a sword and his throat was meant to be cut, when it comes to Krishna consciousness, that suffering is reduced by such a high degree, one will just get a paper cut. So whatever suffering we are getting in this life, it's minimized, and we should understand that it's only because of my past sinful reactions. And a devotee further goes on to think that whatever good things I am able to do and whatever empowerment I'm receiving and whatever credit I'm getting is only by the empowerment of the Lord. So he or she always gives the credit back to his spiritual master or her spiritual master. And the spiritual master passes on the credit to their spiritual master, and then the credit is passed on to Krishna. So that is the mindset or the consciousness of a sincere devotee of the Lord. And Vaisheshika Prabhu, Dhammarupini spiritual master, he recently published a book called The 4 Questions. And that book is very powerful. It's just a small book, and it teaches us how to live the teachings of the Bhagavatam, the sacred teachings. So one of the questions is, the most important question is, we are in this human form of life, and we understand from Bhagavad Gita that there are 8,400,000 species of life. So there's a natural evolution, and then we gradually evolve into higher species of life, and the consciousness evolves to get more refined. And then in the human form of life, we have a distinction from any other form of life, is that we have this ability to inquire, what is the purpose of my life? Who am I? Who is God? And what is my relationship with God? And how can I go back to the eternal world to serve Him? And then the other question is, how may I be of service? Because our constitutional nature is that we are servant of the Lord. In the material world, no one wants to be a servant. Everyone thinks that a servant is a low position and I'll be used and abused. But actually, in the spiritual world, being a servant is the highest platform. We find that the ones who are the servant of the servant of the servant, they are even on a very high, the most highest platform, because they are enjoying this spiritual ecstasy. Not that they want this enjoyment, but they are getting that spiritual enjoyment just by serving the dear devotees of Krishna. So one of the questions, the third question is, what's the lesson? So whenever we are suffering, or even when we are enjoying or we are getting the fruits of our good deeds, we always should ask, what's the lesson? So if we get something bad, of course we'll ask, okay, what's the lesson after some struggle? If we really introspect and we really sincerely want to try to solve the problem, we can ask, what's the lesson? Okay, I'm suffering. Why am I suffering like this? And then try to understand, okay, it's because of my past misdeeds, and Krishna is so kind, He's reduced it. And what can I learn from this? Okay, just say, for example, like in Auckland, sometimes I wasn't, when I was at the Auckland temple, I didn't used to finish all the prasadam, and sometimes I would give it to the living entities out in the garden, and then sometimes I would find that I'll be starving. So then I would realize, okay, that was a reaction because I was wasting prasadam. So that's just one example. So we try to understand what is the lesson behind whatever setbacks I have in my life. But these lessons are there for our introspection. It's not that we go judging everyone else, oh, they are suffering because of this and that. So that is for our self-purification, we do that. So, and the other thing is that this is a pastime of the Lord. So we see that Krishna is, in the purport it mentions that Krishna wants to fight, but He doesn't want to just fight with anybody, Just like us, we have a friendship and we have a circle of our friends. We formally may interact with others, but we have an intimate relationship with our close friends and family. So we're not going to open up to just anyone. So Krishna chooses his devotees to play the part, just like on a stage, a theatrical stage, then there's different people playing the part, but they're friends, and then they act as an enemy or thing like that. And then in one other important point is that we may question that why is the devotee suffering? The devotee has fully surrendered to Krishna, but why is Krishna putting his devotees into suffering? Even Srila Prabhupada, he surrendered everything to Krishna. He had taken sannyas, and one day he was walking in the hot sun trying to distribute his Back to Godhead magazines in India. He was alone. That was before he came to the West and before the International Society for Krishna Consciousness was started. And he was gored by a bull, and he fainted. So we would think a pure devotee like a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada is suffering like this. So in the purport of that famous verse, Tattenu Kampam 10:14-8, it says there that it's not necessarily karma. Krishna is for his special devotees. It says this unhappiness suffered by a sincere devotee is not technically a karmic reaction. It is rather the Lord's special mercy for inducing his devotee to completely let go of the material world and return home back to Godhead. Of course, in Prabhupada's case, that's not it, because he's a pure devotee. But for us, when we suffer, we can try to understand that we are sincerely trying to follow this process, and whatever suffering I'm getting is to burn up my sinful reactions, and also to release the last vestiges of my enjoying spirit in the material world. And another point is that in Bhagavatam 1.9.17 purport, Krishna chooses his devotees to suffer not because he enjoys seeing, like for us, we won't enjoy seeing our child or our friend or our brother, sister, our spouse suffer. But the example that Prabhupada gives in 1.9.17 purport is that the popular saying is that a housewife teaches the daughter-in-law by teaching the daughter. It's not so common now, but in the olden times, especially in India and traditional cultures, when when the young man gets married, he goes and brings his wife to his parents' home, and they live with the parents and his siblings, brothers and sisters. So the mother, she teaches her daughter-in-law by teaching her daughter, because that relationship hasn't been established with her daughter-in-law, and then there might be some friction and some conflict. But because she has a loving relationship with her daughter is not going to take it personally that why is my mother doing this to me? She'll take it because she knows that correction, that chastisement is coming from a place of love to help me to do better and to become better. So in that purport, Prabhupada says, similarly, the Lord teaches the world by teaching the devotee. The devotee does not have to learn anything new from the Lord, because the Lord teaches the sincere devotee always from within. Whenever, therefore, a show is made to teach the devotee, as in the case of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, it is for teaching the less intelligent men. A devotee's duty, therefore, is to ungrudgingly accept tribulations from the Lord as a benediction. So it's just like if I had a child and I love that child, or for example, I'll use my own example. My spiritual master is correcting me, and he's using me as an example for someone. For me, I would feel privileged that my spiritual master, I'm being used as an instrument in my spiritual master's service, and I know that my spiritual master loves me, and he's doing it out of care, and he wants to teach others. So similarly, a devotee will accept it says there this as a benediction that, oh, my spiritual master chose me to teach a lesson. That's on our part for ourselves. So it says there that in the Prabhupada mentions there, as in Bhagavad Gita, so it's not that Arjuna is a pure devotee, but he was covered by Yoga Maya. So there's Mahamaya, the illusory energy of the Lord, and there's Yoga Maya. So Yoga Maya is the internal covering potency of the Lord for his devotees, just like in the pastimes of Krishna. Mother Yashoda is covered over by Yoga Maya. She doesn't know Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, then her relationship with Krishna will be, oh, that's the Lord, awe and reverence. So that covering potency is there to increase the loving relationship. So Arjuna is inquiring from Krishna, before he was as a friendship, and then now he's surrendering to Krishna. So in cases of his dear devotees, there's that covering of the Yoga Maya potency. So there is the example also of Bhishma Dev, that he was a great devotee of the Lord, and we understand from the Bhagavad Gita that he actually went back to Godhead. He went back to the spiritual world, to the Vaikuntha planets. But he was shown as an example. He suffered so many tribulations. In the Mahabharata we hear that when he died, he was shot with so many arrows on his whole body that there was not even any point where there was no arrow. But he had the benediction that he wouldn't die unless he chose to die, and he had some purpose to fulfill. And so the reason why also he was on the opposing side of Krishna, because Krishna took the part of the righteous sons, the Pandavas, Arjuna and Yudhishthira. So Krishna was showing the example that even if one is a great devotee of the Lord, if he takes the side of someone like Duryodhana, who is of demoniac mentality and is doing the wrong things, is adharmic or against religion, then one will not succeed. So that's why he used him as an example. But Bhishma Dev never lost his faith in Krishna. He always knew that Krishna was the Supreme Lord. He never blamed Krishna, but because of his conditioning, he took the side of Duryodhana in the battle. And also another example that is given is in Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's a devotee called Chota Haridas, and he had taken the renounced order of life, but he was looking lustily on a woman. So then Lord Chaitanya, who is Krishna himself, rejected him. But he is a dear devotee of the Lord, because we were just hearing the class not too long ago. One of the speakers was mentioned that Chota Haridas, he was a dear devotee of the Lord. But Lord Chaitanya showed a lesson that if one is progressing on the path of renunciation, it doesn't become him to look at a woman lustily. So Lord Chaitanya showed Chota Haridas as an example. And then later we see that Chota Haridas was accepted by the Lord, and the Lord accepted him. We'll read that in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Krishna, there's many reasons why Krishna chooses his devotee, and the devotee doesn't take it personally. He accepts whatever tribulations are there, and he sees that I am serving the Lord in some way. There's a greater plan of the Lord. So when we suffer, we need to understand that our suffering is personally packaged and designed individually by the Lord for our rectification, to purify something within us so we can come closer to Krishna. And Krishna is so kind, he's personally designed that suffering. Not that he's directly involved in it, but we understand that we are suffering because of our past reaction, but he has minimized it, and he's designed it in such a way that I can, with as less suffering as possible, to continue on in service. And when we see that when devotees who are continuing on in service, that inspires others, that inspires us when we see that. Look at Queen Kunti. She suffered so much. She's a great devotee of the Lord, and the Pandavas, her sons, They suffered so much, but they never ever blamed Krishna, and they always took shelter of Krishna. So we can learn from that despite whatever suffering we have, people turn against us, even though we are aspiring devotees, even within the society there may be some problem or some struggle. And we keep on going. We never leave this society, this international society for Krishna consciousness, because this is part of Srila Prabhupada's legacy. And we keep going on, even though, just like a parent, we see many faults in the like the child or the parent, but there's never any separation because there's love there, and we keep working at it, we keep going. So that's an important point in this purport that Prabhupada mentions. And then at the end, Prabhupada mentions there that sometimes the Lord desires his devotees to come in this material world as preachers or as atheists. So the example he gives is of Lord Buddha, who's an incarnation of the Lord. And he was preaching atheism, that there is no God. Because, and then when we read the Bhagavatam and when we hear from the authorized bona fide teachers, we understand the higher plan. Sometimes we may not understand something, but then there is a better plan by the Lord. So the reason why Lord Buddha came to teach ahimsa and to turn away from the Vedas is because the Vedas have some sanction where animal killing is allowed, but when that animal is killed, it's rejuvenated and is given a better form. But then the Vedas, as time was going, Kali Yuga was progressing, then the society was becoming degraded, and they were using religion, using the Vedas for their own purposes, for meat eating and flesh killing animals. So then Lord Buddha came to stop this by ahimsa, no killing. And then afterwards another incarnation was sent. That's Shankaracharya, who is an incarnation of Lord Shiva, who is a devotee of the Lord. So Krishna sent his devotee, and Lord Shankaracharya, he taught impersonalism. And we may question why is that, but he wanted to, now that there was no animal killing, he wanted to bring back the people back to the Vedas. But then they were not so ready, or whatever the reason may be, we find out later. So he wanted to bring them back to the Vedas slowly. But he didn't teach them further on because he understood that these people were not ready. So there's always some higher plan of the Lord. And even though we may not understand it, we have this deep faith and conviction that Krishna is always our well-wisher. His devotees are always our well-wishers. Just like one senior devotee, she was giving the example that she was at this one temple in the old days, in the 80s, 70s and 80s. And, of course, within every religious organization, there's always some problem, but we don't look at the problems. We see the good and we work on it. So at that time, they were kicked out of the temple, and there was no anything bad that they did, but there was some politics and everything. So she took her children, and then later, years later, she found out that there was abuse going on there. So Krishna had some higher plan and she was saved. So sometimes we may see that there's some struggle or suffering, but Krishna has reduced it, and we see that we may have suffered this, but Krishna has avoided us to suffer something even greater. Or if there is suffering, there's a lesson behind it. For my rectification, even in our own lives, we can actually introspect and see that something happened in our life in the past. We may not have understood it, but when years later, we saw, okay, I grew from that experience, that suffering. I've become a better person, and now I can see that if this happened, I suffered like this and it happened to someone else, I can actually help them because I've been through this. To some degree, I can help someone. So there's always a lesson. We always ask, what's the lesson and how can I be of service? So I'll read the translation again. The Lord replied, O Brahmanas, know that the punishment you inflicted on them was originally ordained by me, and therefore they they will fall to a birth in a demoniac family, but they will be firmly united with me in thought through mental concentration intensified by anger, and they will return to my presence shortly. So if anyone has any questions, comments, corrections.
There's a name for Krishna which means that by one action he can accomplish many. You know what this name is? Do you remember that name? And that was what you were bringing out in so many of those pastimes, so many of those stories, that on the surface level it may appear that somebody is very dear to the Lord is being put into some difficulty, but there's always not even one purpose, multiple purposes being achieved by that. And as you also pointed out, in our own lives, if we can adopt a little bit of that mood, that perspective, that there's always some good. Krishna is all good, absolute. Then, and nothing is happening that's not His will. Then it must be that everything that happens has some purpose, some good purpose to it. It's just a case of whether we can see it or not. You think of that name? There's a specific name the Lord has, which means He accomplishes many things by one action.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Krishna is the expert chess player. He can do many things in one move. Just one thing before I forget, I wanted to mention while I was giving class is that when we are suffering, it says there that the four Kumaras, they cursed the two doorkeepers, and then Krishna is pacifying the Kumaras because they were feeling guilty. He says there that was originally ordained by Him. So when we are suffering, when someone is the instrument of our suffering, then we do our due diligence. Like for example, once my spiritual master, B. Krishna Goswami, he was giving a class in America, and then Romapad Swami asked him the question, so what happens if I'm crossing the road and someone bumps into me? Do I say, I can't say who to blame, just like the bull in the Bhagavatam we hear the bull didn't want to name the perpetrator who was cutting his legs, Kali, to Parishit Maharaj so that he can take some action. So he said, of course we do our due diligence. We don't say, okay, that was ordained by the Lord, I don't want to blame the person. So we may go to the lawyer and do that act, but we understand that there's a higher sanctioning authority behind it, there's a higher plan. But it's not that we also go around sentimentally saying, I can't blame anyone, or it's God, it's Krishna. So we need to also, while we're in the world, we need to act responsibly, but we have an internal life. My spiritual master always says, we have an external life, and then we have that internal life that accept that I'm suffering due to my past reactions, and what's the lesson. So thank you very much. We'll end there. Hare Krishna. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.